Bridges have connected people for centuries. When it comes to helping small businesses build bridges with the people they serve, there's a new gold standard. 412 Communications offers a uniquely comprehensive array of media solutions, including writing and editing services, web and graphic design, social media management, multimedia production, consultation, and more to help your brand establish and maintain strong, lasting connections with your clientele. Learn more at 412communications.com.
Let's face it, saving for retirement doesn't happen overnight. It takes planning, and Limestone Pension Associates has spent the past 35 years helping small businesses do just that. Limestone specializes in crafting, planning, and handling the day-to-day administration of qualified pension plans tailor-fit to your company's needs and objectives. To schedule a consultation, call 302-479-8817 or visit limestonepension.net to learn more.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this off-ice officials workshop presented by Delaware Hockey Night. For those of you who know me, or for those of you that we kind of know each other, because let's face it, that's a reality. I am James Witherite, the public address and play-by-play announcer for University of Delaware Hockey for the Delaware Junior Blue Hens, and I also do a fair bit of work both as an off-ice and on-ice official. So I'm sure a lot of us, we've crossed paths throughout the course of the last few years since I've returned to the Mid-Atlantic from New York State. So to those of you that we know each other, hi, thanks for joining us for this Off-Ice Officials Workshop. To those of you that we may not know each other yet, certainly look forward to seeing you around the rinks, getting to know you as our paths cross, and wishing you an absolutely successful season and a safe season. All of that, and thank you for doing what you do to make this game better for its participants. A lot of times, our job, and we're going to focus on our job as off-ice officials, is one of the most thankless jobs out there, aside from the on-ice officials. But I've heard stories, I've seen it before, where parent volunteers will run as far away from the score box as they possibly can for one reason or another. And now granted, this is something I've done from U10 to the AHL. But once you've got a few key concepts solidified, this job is not as daunting as it may seem at first glance. The downside, there really aren't that many resources for off-ice officials, and what the job/jobs entail. And I know even from my travels, I hear a lot of questions about what constitutes a shot on goal. How do we handle this situation when there are concurrent but not coincidental penalties? And the resources just aren't as readily there as they should. So I'm putting this workshop on tonight, and you'll be able to access it via the Delaware Hockey Night YouTube page and also the Delaware Hockey Night Facebook page as a Facebook Live. You'll be able to come back to it if you want to refer to anything, or if you want to direct other people to it for their benefit. So with that said, before we get started, if you've got any questions at all, and forgive the low-tech environment tonight. You see the green screen here instead of the background. You see no real graphics to speak of. It's just me and a PowerPoint. It's just us in a room talking about the game we love. So forgive the low-tech vibe. If you've got any questions at all, and I know you do, there is no such thing as a dumb question. Put it in the chat box, either on YouTube or on Facebook Live. I'll be oscillating between the two browsers to make sure we get all of them covered. And we'll answer as many of them as we can. But let's get right into it. We will start with scorekeeping basics, and our best guide through this is the USA Hockey Rulebook. If you haven't already done it, go onto your phone and download the USA Hockey Rulebook app. It's free. It's in the App Store. It's in the Google Play Store. This is something you'll want to have handy, especially as the season goes on. It's a great resource for us as on-ice officials. It's also a great resource for us, me, all of you, as off-ice officials through the course of the season. So we're going to get right to it. And we'll start with some scorekeeping basics, and we'll use the rule book as our guide to go through point by point what we're going to talk about. Rule 505 of the USA Hockey Rulebook pertains to the official scorer. A few key points of what the job entails. Before the start of the game, the official scorer shall obtain from the manager or coach of both teams a list of all eligible players for each team. I'm going to preface this by saying, once you are in the score box, you are an official. Let's face it, none of us are neutral. but we have to act neutral. I've seen parents cheer in the box. I've seen penalty box attendants dispute calls. Had that happen a couple weeks ago while I was on the ice, in fact. And no, you're an official. You're one of us. You're part of our team for this hour and a half. So that aside, it starts when you obtain both rosters and have them affixed to the score sheet. And we'll skip down to the third bullet point here. They shall indicate those players who actually participated in the game. So not only do you have the rosters, but it's also on you to indicate what players are scratched. And you can do that by, obviously, conferring with both coaches. The official scorer shall keep a record of each goal scored by indicating those players who are credited with scoring the goal and any assists. At Delaware, we've got instant replay. That's not too common. That being said, the on-ice officials will report to you goals and assists. Write down the goal scorer, I should say. In the goal column, write down the assist numbers, if applicable, in the assist column on the score sheet. They're all pretty much laid out similarly. And then you'll have to also include the time of the goal. There are two ways to do it. One, time remaining on the clock, or time elapsed in the period. For your purposes, time remaining on the clock is absolutely fine. Just whatever you choose, be consistent. And the one note on that, whenever there's less than a minute remaining in the period, if your clock has tenths of seconds, make sure you round up in that last minute when recording clock time. So say the clock reads 54.2 when a goal is scored, you're going to record that as 55 seconds. So just be aware of that. You'll also note, and here's kind of the sticky one, the time any substitute or temporary goalkeeper has entered the game, and designate any goal scored when the goalkeeper has been removed from the ice. So, whenever a goaltender leaves the ice for whatever reason, if he's being substituted for by another goaltender or by an extra attacker, make note of that time. I would say on scratch paper, and then transfer it to the score sheet. If there's a goalie substitution, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you in a very short period of time, if there's a goalie substitution, indicate that time as well as the number of shots that goalie faced to that point, and we'll talk more about shots on goal later, and the number of goals against. So both goalies will have accurate stats kept for them. If you've got any questions regarding the duties of the official scorer, go ahead and put them in the chat box. And we'll get to them as we move along. I didn't create a slate for the duties of the timekeeper because it's really quite cut and dry. Set the clock for each period. Start the clock when the puck hits the ice for each face-off. Stop the clock at the whistle. Super cut and dry there. Where it starts to get challenging is when it comes to timekeeping for penalties. And you know what? That's next. The duties of the penalty timekeeper. And a lot of times, there's one of us, or maybe two of us, splitting all these jobs up amongst ourselves. Usually you've got a scorekeeper and a timekeeper/penalty timekeeper. So as far as penalty timekeeping is concerned, the duties include, and this is from the USA Hockey Rulebook, the duties include maintaining a record of all penalties imposed, including the names, numbers of those players penalized, the infractions assessed, the duration of each penalty, and the time at which the penalty was assessed. So you'll have number 15, Bob Smith, slashing 2 minutes, and that penalty assessed with 10:12 to go in the first period. So that all goes on the score sheet. Scorekeepers, that falls under your jurisdiction. The timekeeper will post the 2 minutes and the correct number, if applicable, on the scoreboard. Now, a couple notes as far as penalty timekeeping is concerned. If a player is issued a misconduct, that goes on the sheet. It does not go on the board. Coincidental minor penalties, or major penalties as the case may be, are not recorded on the clock either. So say you have one player from Team A, one player from Team B, both given 2 minutes for whatever. Say things were boiling over after play and they decide to shove each other around a little bit. They both get 2 minutes for roughing. They both go to the box. Those penalties are recorded on the sheet, but they do not go on the scoreboard, and play continues as 5-on-5. Moving on to referee signals. This is where the app comes in handy. USA Hockey Rulebook Appendix 3. And we'll go over some of the more commonly seen signals here. So I go to my Appendix 3. So we'll start with some of the basic ones that really make a lot of sense. And I'm going to back up and stand up for these, or at least just back up. There we go. That way you can see the area where the signals are typically given. So we'll start with the basic ones. Holding makes all the sense in the world. Hooking, elbowing, high sticking. Tripping is a sweeping motion down over the leg, like that. You see those a fair bit. Then we go into the more abstract. We have interference, body checking, delay of game, head contact is the back of the head, and that comes with a misconduct. Roughing is a fist extended out to the side. Charging, you don't see that too often. At least we hope not. Boarding, you see that sometimes. Fist into the palm of the hand. Of course, the misconduct penalty is the hands on the hips. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Think technical foul in basketball, same thing. And then the signal for a penalty shot is both arms crossed over the head. There are a lot more. They are in the Rulebook app. If there are any two things to familiarize yourself with in the Rulebook app, it is the official signals and also the casebook as it pertains to expiration of penalties. Take it with you on the train, take it with you on the bus if you use public transportation. Read it in the cafe at the rink before games. Really, really a great, great resource. Has anybody got any questions so far? If so, we remind you to put them in the chat box. It's been pretty quiet so far. And now we're going to move on to some common game situations that crop up, and from my experience both as an on and off ice official have prompted the question from the other off ice officials of, okay, what do we do? And common sense doesn't necessarily prevail here. So, and also NHL rules don't necessarily prevail, as there are some significant changes between the NHL rulebook and the USA Hockey rulebook. So we're going to start with coincidental penalties. We touched on this briefly. If both teams are assessed an equal number and type of penalties at a given stoppage, no time goes on the scoreboard, and on-ice strength is not reduced. So, you know, in the NHL, if there's a scrum after the whistle and two players get 2 minutes each for roughing, they go off and they're 4-on-4 for 2 minutes. That's not the case in the USA Hockey rulebook. We stay 5-on-5. No time goes on the board. All players serve the full duration of their penalties and are released from the penalty box at the first stoppage upon expiration of their penalties. So say the penalties occur at 8:22 to go in the first period. You've heard 6:22 and a whistle or something like that. So what that means is the players are released from the penalty box at the first stoppage of play for whatever reason. At the 6:22 to go mark, if there's a stoppage there, good for the players. Other than that, it has to be the first stoppage immediately after. Katie Heffington had a question. A minor and misconduct is given. Is the misconduct served concurrently or separately? Very good question. We'll get to that momentarily. Thank you for that. And in the case of coincidental penalties, a goal does not release any player from the box in this instance. Reason being, play is even strength. So, with no differential in on-ice person power, a goal would not cause any penalty to terminate. We'll touch on the bit about the minor and misconduct. So 2 and 10, as we call it colloquially, at least until now when younger age groups have seen reduced penalty times in the case of, I know in the DVHL, in those lower groups, the minor is 1:30 and the misconduct is 8 minutes. Some places the misconduct is 7:30. Check your local league's rule book, since the USA Hockey rule book allows for this adjustment but doesn't give concrete guidance on it. What is concrete is the misconduct begins when the minor expires. So, be it the minor penalty runs its course naturally, no score or no goal is scored to reduce it, then the player sits for 12 minutes, or 9.5 in Katie's example, plus a stoppage. Player gets 2 and 10 for boarding with 11:45 to go in the second period. Okay, that's a bad example, but actually it's probably a good example. 11:45 to go in the second period. So that minor, provided no goal is scored to negate the rest of it, takes us to 9:45 to go in the second period. That's when the misconduct starts. So the misconduct would end at the first stoppage, at least 15 seconds into the third period. Now, if a goal is scored during the minor, the player who serves the minor is released from the penalty box as such, provided that team was shorthanded at the time. And that is when the misconduct begins. Katie, does that answer your question? While we wait for Katie to give us the go-ahead, we'll move on to the next game situation. Oh, we skipped over one. Concurrent but not coincidental penalties. I had this on Sunday, actually. If both teams have a player in the penalty box serving non-coincidental penalties, so Team A is assessed a penalty, 30 seconds later, Team B is assessed a penalty. So we've got one player from each team in the box. We're 4-on-4. There's time on the board for both players, and that time is different. They're not coincidental penalties. Neither team is shorthanded in this situation. Thus, if a goal is scored, no penalty is due to expire. And we're talking all about minor penalties here. I had, who did I have? Delmarva and Genesis on Sunday. Play was 4-on-4. I believe it was in the second period. Delmarva scores a goal with 38 seconds left on the Genesis penalty. Genesis player leaves the box, score comes down off the board, or the penalty comes down off the board, and my partner and I are like, no, this was an even strength goal. And the first thing we did was go to the score box, get everything situated. When did this penalty begin? Okay, put the remaining time back on. Player comes back to the box. Let the coach know. And it's a common misconception that anytime there's a player in the box and there's a goal scored, the first minor penalty that was assessed is canceled out. No, that's not the case at all. We stay 4-on-4 or 3-on-3 in that situation because neither team is shorthanded. And here's how to remember it with a rule of thumb. Did the team scored against have fewer players on the ice than the other team at the time of the goal? If so, cancel out the minor penalty with the least amount of time remaining. Further to this point, if there's a delayed penalty on the play and a goal is scored, if there's nobody in the box at the time, the penalty is recorded on the sheet, but not served because it's canceled out by the goal. If there is a shorthanded situation when that happens, the player in the box comes out, and the delayed penalty is served for its entire 2 minutes. By the way, Katie, thank you for that very good question. Appreciate your input and your participation. Double minors, misconducts, goalie, and bench penalties. And this is where you've got to be careful, especially as it pertains to players, for lack of a better term, fouling out of a game. 4 penalties causes a player to be issued a game misconduct. If a player is assessed a double minor, that's 2 of them. It's recorded as 2 separate 2-minute penalties, not 1 4-minute penalty. So you're going to use 2 lines on the score sheet. And that second 2-minute penalty begins when the first expires. You'll put 4 minutes on the clock. However, if there's a goal scored in the first 2 minutes, from 4 minutes to 2:01, if there's a goal scored in that time that was a power play goal, then that clock gets reset at 2 minutes for the start of the second minor. Oh, skipped a slide inadvertently there, sorry. Same situation in the case of a minor plus misconduct, a 2 and 10. You're going to use 2 lines on the score sheet. And like we talked about with Katie's question, the misconduct begins when the first minor expires, be it naturally or by way of a power play goal. Use 2 lines on the score sheet, and both of them make sure that you are recording the penalties according to the player to whom they are assessed. There are cases where there is a different player serving, say the minor in a 2 and 10, or if there is a bench minor or a penalty assessed to the goalie. A skater is going to have to serve that penalty. Make sure you're recording that penalty to go against the player to whom the penalty is assessed and not the player serving. Some score sheets have space to indicate who's serving it. If you use the Game Sheet app, if you're in the EJEPL, if you're in the AHF in our area, if you're in the Collegiate Hockey Federation, you use Game Sheet as well. So If that's the case, there is a place for it on that app. But if you're using an old-fashioned paper score sheet, maybe indicate in parentheses the number of the player serving the penalty, but do it out of the way from the column where you put the name and number of the player to whom the penalty is assessed, because that's one thing you don't want to get confused. You want to make sure that penalties are assessed to the correct players, especially for the purpose of the 4-penalty limit. Can anyone serve the penalty, or does it have to be someone on the ice at the time? That is different based on the circumstance, and that's all in the USA Hockey Rulebook. The on-ice officials will help you sort all of that out. I don't have a clean answer for that, because it really is case by case. In the case of a penalty against the goaltender, player on the ice. In the case of a misconduct, it can be anybody. So it really does differ from one situation to another. Here's a fun one. Double minor on one side, single minor on the other. And this does happen. The situation: a player on Team A is assessed a double minor. A player on Team B is assessed a single minor. 3 players go to the penalty box. Player A1 and player B1 to serve the entirety of the time they were assessed. So A1 will serve 4 minutes plus a stoppage. B1 will serve 2 minutes plus a stoppage. And that 2-minute differential, which serves as the power play, is served by A2. To satisfy that on-ice strength differential. And that 2-minute differential is the only penalty to be posted on the clock. On-ice strength is 5 versus 4. Now, when do players return? We touched on it briefly, but A2 on the fly after 2 minutes. Forgive the typo on this slide, folks. B2 returns at 2 plus a stoppage. A2 returns at 4 plus a stoppage. So A2's purpose here, rather A1 returns at 4 plus a stoppage. A2's purpose is to serve the time differential, and that's it. The other players, because by them both coming off, there's no change in on-ice strength. That was satisfied by A2. The others, like with a pair of coincidental minors, have to wait for the first stoppage after their penalty expires. Stacked penalties. If you search stacked penalties in the USA Hockey Rulebook, you're not going to find it. Delayed penalties is what it's listed as, and it's USA Hockey Rule 408. Here's what is said. If a third player shall be penalized while 2 players of the same team are serving non-coincidental penalties, they shall proceed to the penalty bench immediately and may be replaced by a substitute on the ice. However, the penalty time of the third player shall not begin until the first such penalty has expired. So, in short, on-ice strength can be no less than 3 players at any given time. So how this works is the third player goes to the box, is replaced on the ice to keep 5 on 3. That third penalty, the time begins when the first penalty ends. However, because penalties 2 and 3 are still active when the first one ends rather, that first player can't come onto the ice until the earliest of these 3 circumstances. A goal, on the fly at the expiration of the second penalty, which is when play can legally become 5 on 4, or the first stoppage in play after the expiration of the first penalty. So stack penalties will have you on your toes. Save this slide. We may have to do another seminar solely on stack penalties and how to handle them, because it can get complicated. This is a question that I hear quite a bit, with some added words, honestly. And it's one of the greatest misconceptions in the game. What constitutes a shot on goal? I was working a tournament, a college tournament it was, in March, and there was a goalie dad from a team in New York who sought me out between periods saying that I missed 5 shots on goal because his kid played the puck on certain occasions that I deemed were not shots on goal because the trajectory of the puck would not have landed it in the goal. So the easiest way I can tell you to do this is to imagine that the goalie does not exist. And this is where it gets subjective. And this is where, if you're screened by an official or a stanchion or something else, there will be some guesswork involved, but as I've learned, it all tends to average out over time. Where was the puck headed? It was either headed into the goal or it wasn't. If the puck would have been headed into the goal, had the goalie not existed, then it's a shot on goal. Any other situation? No. Into the post or crossbar? Not a shot on goal. Higher wide? Not a shot on goal, even if the goalie played the puck. The goalie can change the trajectory of the puck. The goalie can play the puck. The goalie can cover the puck. But if the puck were not headed to the goal and into the goal, had the goalie not been there, then it's not a shot on goal. Blocked by another player, even if its trajectory was toward the goal, that's a blocked shot, so it's neither a shot on goal nor a save. Remember, and I can't stress this enough, the mere act of the goalie playing the puck is not enough to qualify a shot as on goal. I'm sure there are some more questions out there right now. So, what we're going to do, I'm going to pause for a few minutes. Those questions that you do have, put them in the chat box, both on YouTube and on Facebook Live. We'll come back in 2 or 3 minutes, have a look at these questions, tackle as many of them as we can, and then send you on your way. Be back in about 2, maybe 3 minutes. Take this time to get those questions in the chat box. When we come back, we'll take them one by one. Katie with another good question. Are you to record time if a goalie comes off the ice and is replaced by a skater leaving the net open and going 6-on-5? So the answer to that, yes. You are to record those times because the goalie is off the ice. So in the case of an empty net at the end of the game, if the goalie comes off with 1:20 to go and we're working with 17-minute periods, you would record the goalie's time on ice as 49 minutes, 40 seconds. Because the goal scored, if there were a goal scored in the empty net, would then also not be counted against the goalie because he wasn't there to play it. So you wouldn't count that against him. Likewise, and this is where it's a little bit questionable, and where I should say a little bit loose, honestly. When you've got a goalie scurrying off for a delayed penalty to prolong the extra attacker, I do make note of that time. That being said, that is less crucial than the end of game empty net situation. D over. If you have a situation where the goalie hasn't covered the puck and a player makes multiple taps on the puck into a goalie's pad, are all considered individual shots on goal. That's your discretion. Amid a scrum, the big question is, does it have a legitimate chance of getting there? In that situation, there are likely other players present. I'll give one, maybe two. I'm looking more at that case, in that case, for changes of direction. If there's another player elsewhere trying to put a rebound away, then I'll definitely give a second, a third shot. But if it's one player making multiple taps of the puck into the goalie's pad, I'll give one and just let that be the end of it. Again, it really is a matter. It's so subjective at that point. Use your discretion on that, and just be fair all around. But I'll give one there. Now, if it comes from one angle in, saved, ricochets, and then from the other side, another chance, another player, yeah. Then I'll give the multiple shots on goal. If there are any other questions, now's the time for that. We'll get you the nifty little lower third here. Yeah, we still have that. Failing anything else, if you think of anything as you go along, feel free to drop me a note. I'll get you that address here shortly. Nope, wrong keyboard. So if you've got any further questions, email me here. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. Weekends, of course, are a little bit of a challenge. Katie, sometimes the officials only give one assist and or say the wrong number. If it's obvious, correct it. The goal is to get it right. And sometimes on ice, we may missee a number, or we may not see the second assist. And as you know, I've made corrections from the instant replay booth a fair bit. Not everybody has that, honestly, but if it's obvious, by all means, go ahead. But make sure you get it right. Confer with your on ice officials. Remember, You and the on-ice officials are a team. You're working together. If you see something they don't, let them know. They'll give you the go-ahead. I've conferred with coaches on who gets a secondary assist, things like that. On-ice officials do have the final verification at the end of everything, but that being said, our eyes as off-ice officials are there to support theirs on the ice. And sometimes, frankly, when it comes to goals and assists, we've got the better look. So work together on that. They'll make the initial call if it's obviously wrong. If it's a clerical error on their part, that does happen. Make the adjustment as you see fit. You're watching the game just the same as they are. You might have a better angle on a number. Frankly, you may know the players on one or both teams better, or the line combinations better, or whatever the case may be. The big thing is work together to get it right. With that being said, thank you all for joining me on this Wednesday night from what once was a studio. This will be available on the Delaware Hockey Night YouTube page for your reference for, I don't know, as long as Delaware Hockey Night exists, I guess. Also on the DHN Facebook page. If you've got any questions, there's that email address one last time. Happy to help any way I can. Best wishes to all of you on the season ahead. Have a safe, successful season. Off-ice officials, thank you so much for the work that you do to keep this game going, for all of us who love it, for the participants, for the spectators, for the families. Your work is absolutely valuable. Have fun. Enjoy yourselves. And we'll see you at the rink. Have a good night.